Hey, my name is David Allen South, and I am using this digital time machine to bring you a message. Now, we want to live in a world where people love each other, are honest and honorable, and share in a peaceful fashion. Now, this is the world I would like to live in, but it is not the world I live in now, nor has the world ever been peaceful. Now, there have been pockets of peace in places, but nonetheless, this is a fact based faith episode, but this is Quran quotes. The first, I did a little bit of editorializing, had a Tourette episode, but didn't take anything out of context. But here, there we covered how Muhammad's pattern was to go in and slander everyone, teach his people to do the same thing, so that when people complain, then Muslims can turn around and say, "You're persecuting us. We have the right to defend ourselves," and then they initiate violence. We showed how, in the first episode of the Quran quotes, how they denigrate people, consistently slandering them, trying to diminish their position in society, literally using lies to ruin people's lives and authority so that they cannot then expose the crimes of Islam. Sorry. Anyway, I had to stop. But what we're going to do here is this is an expose. Some of these may be repeats and some of them may not. But here we have 28 of Hadith, Surah, and Islamic writings specifically about violence and other aspects of Islamic responsibility in their service to Allah. And then there are 41 specifically in the Quran, here on this list, talking about how Muslims are to attack and harm and maim and murder and enslave and rape and terrorize and torture. What we All right. I can't seem to get it right. First of all, I must reiterate everyone in any religion is a victim. Whether they are the fist with the weapon harming for the cause of that religion, or whether they're the peaceful, passive individual that is crushed by the weight of the forced upon doctrines from said religions that are designed to manipulate and control people and their resources. People are victims. The Father made us all victims so that when He redeemed us, we would all be guilty. We're all equal. We will all be saved. We're all on an equal plane. Anyone that does good, we must understand it's because the Father gave them the ability, the opportunity, gave them the initial power to accomplish what the Father wanted to do. Because when the Father makes a statement, it has to come pass. It has got to come pass in proper detail. Otherwise, He's just like everybody else. And if the Father above, who created us, cannot tell the truth and it cannot be trusted when He says something, then who can we trust anywhere ever? People are victims. We are discussing religion. Now, this is about Islam, but I have to admit that Islam was created by Jesuit Templar proto individuals that had gotten together with Constantinian people in Istanbul. They got a candidate, they trained him, took him to Saudi Arabia, and then established the legend of Muhammad, the supposed illiterate individual that conquered the Arabian Peninsula. Now, a little bit of background. Okay, the three daughters of Allah were honored by Muslims or people who honored Islam. They weren't as violent, they weren't as vicious, and they weren't as selfish, they weren't as jealous, they weren't as covetous. They lived their lives as best that they could in the regions that they were born in. And when the Muhammad creature, character, actor, poser, with his team They came in to start this legend going. And it came that the premise was an alteration. And that alteration is, hey, guess what? No more honoring the three daughters of Allah because we've gone monotheistic here. Funny, could have easily been monotheistic with their deity having sons and daughters, I guess, but nonetheless, this was the fulcrum that they had designed. And then the system that they established was, as we can see, in the very first times that Muhammad would go to another community, say Mecca, Medina, for instance, going and slandering their prophets, slandering their traditions, slandering their culture, slandering their lifestyles and their families, acting like he's more important, like he's superior. He knows more than them, he's better than them, and he talks that way. And they got to the point where they said, hey, Muhammad, you have not prophesied anything. You have shown us zero miracles, and yet you've done nothing but slander us, taunt us, and torture us with your folklore. And then he turned around and said, I'll make a deal with you. If you, this, that, and the other make concessions and allow me and my team in and allow us to whatever and intermingle, then we'll be cool. But no, kept on harassment, kept on with the slander, kept on with constant belittling because that's the process. Because you always have to try and prepare the people you're invading, and it says to make them feel their abasement. We read that in the first segment. 2 or 3 different times in several different verses in the Quran, it talked about how they are to belittle non-believers, how they are to slander them, how they are to make them feel their abasement, how they are to even extort from them the jizya, the protection money. They make an agreement, we'll protect you. In other words, you don't pay us, we'll kill you, we'll take your stuff, we'll replace you with somebody that will, this, that, and the other. Or if you pay us, you still have to know that you are abased, you are below us, you are a lowlife, you are nothing to us, because Sharia law and Mohammedan Islam is a caste system. According to Muhammad, he's the only one that doesn't go to hell. All other Muslims go to hell. And most Muslims will never get out of hell. And if they do, it's after an awful long time. Because you see, you have to be a jihadi. You have to murder innocent non-believers. Non-Muslims are the target, and Jews especially. We will go through that and how they specifically pick out Hebrews to hate and to eradicate. Why? Because they wouldn't accept Muslims' folklore. Muhammad's version especially. He came and tried to force it on them, and even saying, well, I know that your version is true, and God, Allah, gave the information to Uncle Moses and to David and to Jesus, but now I'm the new prophet, so you got to listen to me. I know what you said is true, but you got to listen to me now. And they says, but no, these are real prophets, real prophecies, documented before the things happen and then documented by eyewitnesses later, which is something that Islam couldn't compete with. So they determined we will eliminate our competition. Again, they got that from Catholicism. The very first terrorist, worldwide terrorist organization was the Proto-Templar Jesuit Catholics. The Catholic, or cathode, means universal. They took all pagan rites, rituals, and they amalgamated them together. Cronus was the god, and his son Saturn, or Zeus. This is where you get your sun god situation and then your son of the sun god Zeus, or Isus, in the Christian version. We have Julius Caesar posthumously being donned with the moniker Christos, or Krishna. Because again, the Greeks amalgamated a bunch of information from the Hindis when they sent several of their philosopher friends and historical theologians or whatever over there. And they came back with information and even their evolutionary system. And so then the Greeks cogitated on that, then the Romans inherited their cogitations of the Hindi cogitations, and then we get this culture when the first century comes up and the Messiah comes to earth as predicted in many different prophecies, but specifically predicted in Daniel chapter 9, verses 25 and 26. So we know that the Hebrew Messiah is a true Messiah, is a true prophet, because his birthplace was predicted many hundreds of years before he was born. Some of the things that he would do, 500 to 700 years minimum before he was born, and even as many as 800 or more years before he was born, certain aspects of what he would accomplish were documented in the Hebrew writings by the prophets. So that's why Catholics say, well, we are the descendants of the followers of the Messiah. We have taken that mantle upon us. And Islam also stating, well, there is credibility and credulity in the Hebrew scriptures, but we are the final message. You see, one thing that everybody agrees on, including Alexander the Great, because the Septuagint was conscripted by Alexander the Great because he saw Daniel chapter 8 before he conquered Darius. Daniel chapter 8 discussed Macedonia conquering Medo-Persia. When he conquered Medo-Persia, he had the Septuagint. He had it translated, the Hebrew scriptures translated into his native tongue. And then he put libraries all around his empire and made sure the Hebrew scriptures were there. Why? He found them personally valid. And then when the Messiah was born in the first century, well, that's Daniel chapter 9. It literally has a formula of when Messiah was to show up. Calls him Messiah the Prince, says he will be cut off, but not for himself. Says that he will seal up the vision and the prophecy, that he will bring in everlasting righteousness. It talks about aspects of the redemption and salvation process. Again, saying that he will be cut off, but not for himself. And then it says after that, 49 years later, the city and the temple will be destroyed. Since that happened, was documented, and both friend and foe, pro and con alike, saw, witnessed, and documented these things, as well as some of them being aware of the prophecies discussing it. We know that the Hebrew scriptures are valid, because you can't say it was written after the fact, because the original Hebrew scriptures were written before the Septuagint. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had anything to draw up the Septuagint with. So therefore, the credibility is the Hebrew scriptures alone. The Hebrew scriptures alone have validity, not the religion, not the Jewish religion, but the Hebrews that follow what the Father sent down to Uncle Moses and what they had gathered from Adam and Noah. You know, I'm sure there might have been some artifacts that came all the way down through the flood. I don't see why not. That was a pretty big storage ship. So anyway, religion is evil. It's bad. The Father told us that he wanted a relationship with us personally. And the new covenant isn't we don't have to obey the commandments anymore. The new covenant is that his Torah will be written in our hearts, the very commandments, the foundation of the commandments, the instructions. What is called Torah will be written in our heart. On the day of judgment, he's going to push rewind, he's going to push play, and we will see everything that happened, everything anyone thought, said, did, their intentions. We will see that every suffering moment, anything from sorrow, pain, disease, death, anything that caused any form of inconvenience was either directly or indirectly a result of someone breaking the Father's commandments. So, Torah is eternal. And we know that the Father lets us know things before they happen. Isaiah 46:10 is one of the verses. There's another verse in the ending part of chapter 45 that he also lets us know that he tells us the end from the beginning. And one of the passages states, not only does he tell us the end from the beginning, but he lets us do this so that we will know that he is the only true deity, the only true creator. And he is set apart from any others because no religion has any prophecy of any value. And even in Islam and Christianity, they stole from the original Hebrew scriptures so that they would at least have a form of phraseology that sounded similar and certain data points that they could say, you see, we're prophets, when in fact they just stole it again from the Father's word. So this is Quran quotes, but again, starting with the premise that everyone in any religion, and an evolution is a religion, uh, I've already shown that. They even made the mistake of calling humanists, religious humanists, when they wrote the Humanist Manifesto in 1933. And they declared that we know that we were not created, therefore we must figure out where we came from. And society must understand that we will take over and we will force this philosophy on everyone. Basically, that's what the Catholics did, force their philosophy on people. Basically, that's what Islamites did, force their philosophy on everyone. That's the Masons. What are they doing? Forcing their philosophy on anyone and everyone. And they bring in evolution. Well, again, the Masons, the Muslims, the Jesuits, Catholics, Templars, all of these groups come from the same proto-religious pagan stock. It's just every time they get caught, they have to kind of dissimulate and they have to pretend like they've changed or died or disappeared, but then they just rear their ugly head up again. Remember, the bird that faces east and west, the predator, because again, some look one way, some look the other way, because it depends on what fraternal order. But there are the ones that are in the middle. You got your Constantinian Rome, your proto, and then you've got your Rome, which is one is more Islamic and the other is more Catholic. But nonetheless, we see forced conversions, forced confessions. We see extortion. We don't see people helping the poor. We don't see justice for the widows and the orphans. We do not see miracles. We do not see revival. We do not see all things in common. We do not see love, peace, joy, and happiness under any of these banners. But many precious people on the bottom, trying to be sincere, are trying to bring peace to the world, trying to bring hope, trying to build faith. But they have contaminated versions. The proto-Catholics hunted down and slaughtered the original followers of the Messiah and their Gentile converts. Hunted them down and slaughtered them, gathered up all of the first century writings, and then rewrote them. I'm working on a paper using their very own comments during the Nicene committees, and even during later times. I don't have my book anymore about Charlemagne, but he and his dynasties also made sweeping changes and created new doctrines, and that's why the world, because of proto-Catholicism, the world went further and further into medieval times. And then when they invented Islam, by the time Charlemagne was alive, he made deals with the Islamites. And of course, as you know, right around that time, they went from medieval times into the Dark Ages and the bubonic plague and people dying. And people forget that Muslims put feces and urine in food of non-Muslims. It's another way to denigrate them. It's another way to contaminate them, because people aren't supposed to drink urine or eat feces. Even though Muhammad says it's okay to drink his piss, it's healthy. And and it's okay, evidently, according to Muhammad, to drink camel urine. That's supposed to be healthy. I would not recommend it, by the way. So we're going to be reading from the Quran. I'm not going to be doing any editorializing. I'm going to try and keep that to a minimum anyway. I'm going to try not to get angry and have a Tourette episode. And I'm just trying to inform people on what the Quran actually says, so that you can make your own mind up whether it's a religion of peace, which, again, let's just take a quick look at peace. There are two types of peace. One is the aggressor's form of peace, which is they want the absence of competition. They want the absence of opposition. Now, then there's the other people, the people who truly want peace. They want the absence of conflict. Now, the one group uses lies, violence, hatred, subterfuge, slander, and the other just tries to get by because they're too busy trying to make the world a better place for their own little corner and having to deal with the outside world because that's the only way they can get their monetary stability to protect their family and to feed them. So, here we go. This is actually a download from a website. I am not a genius. I rely on other people because a lot of people have gathered a lot of the information. And this is really concise. The one I used the other day was from, well, I won't even say it. I'm just going to say that these people love you as well as we do. The Father above and the Messiah love you. But an imam that sends a Muslim to murder an innocent person, to go out and kidnap some little child so that they can put him into sex slavery, tells you to go out and extort from the local merchants because it's that time of month and they have to bring in their quota. I don't see peace. I don't see joy. I don't see harmony. I don't see mercy. I don't see a benefit in any way. So I do see religion. I see extortion. I see manipulation. I see fraud. That's what I see. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be editorializing. Let's just see what the Quran has to say. And I'll be quiet. Kind of. This is Quran 2, 191 to 193. And kill them wherever you find them. Turn them out from where they have turned you out. And al-fitnah, disbelief or unrest, is worse than killing. But if they desist, then lo, Allah is forgiving and merciful. And fight them until there is no fitnah. Then lo, worshipping, no fitnah, which is disbelief and worshipping others along with Allah. In other words, the three daughters of Allah, and or polytheism. And worship Allah alone. That's His new way, His new change. But if they cease, let there be no transgression except zalim, the polytheists and wrongdoers, etc. So in other words, evidently, they have loopholes to where you can continue to harm people, even when certain concessions are made. I may be misunderstanding that, but I believe we read this shorter version of this passage yesterday. Man, it is a long one. Trim my nose hairs. They're really mean and attacking me. All right, I guess I'm just going to have to read it all. And worship for Allah alone. But if they cease, let there be no transgression except against azalim, the polytheists and the wrongdoers. People that are honest, take care of their family. They don't lie, they don't cheat, they don't steal, they don't defraud, they don't defame. But they're called wrongdoers because they don't believe in Islam. To me, they're right doers. Clearly, people that are honest and honorable, they're the ones that are righteous. They're not wrongdoers. You can't say someone that is honest and honorable is a wrongdoer just because they don't believe in some funk deity. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be disrespectful. Of course, Allah is not a God. He did not create the universe. Allah is Satan. The Quran admits it. Let's not forget, the Quran admits, Muhammad admitted that he was demon-possessed from the outset and was tricked into saying things that were not true. It's called the Satanic Chronicles, in the book written by the person pretending to be Salman Rushdie. That was a pseudonym. And he, of course, fatwa. They want to kill him because they exposed the fact that from the very beginning, Muhammad admits he is demon-possessed on the outset, and that everything he says is a trick from the devil. But just because he comes back and says, well, I was tricked by the devil, but now I'm fixed, and everything I say is true, Again, that's what I'm doing with you folks here in this series. So I'm going through and showing the difference between what he says and what we actually see in the real world. All right, war, in which Muslims are defending their homes and families. I must have missed a phrase. It says the verse, oh, okay, sorry, that's an editorial. All right, Quran 2:244. Then fight in the cause of Allah and know that Allah hears and knows all. Quran 2:216. Fighting is prescribed for you, and you dislike it. But it is possible that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you love a thing which is bad for you. Okay. You may dislike being a jihadi and going out and murdering innocent people. But it's good that you go out and murder innocent people. It's bad that you want to be peaceful and not go out and harm. Well, there it is right there. 100% proof that the Quran shows clearly that there is no peace in that religion. He says it right there. It cannot be anything other than proof. Fighting is prescribed for you. Prescribed. It is a prescription. It's as if he's a doctor and he's saying, look, you're going to die if you don't do this. In other words, you're going to burn in hell forever. According to Muhammad, you're going to burn in hell forever if you don't go out and murder non-Muslims. And if you don't go out and extort from them. It's a piracy network. There is no peace in Islam. It's a pirate network based on fables, fabricated folklore. Sorry. But it says it right here. Fighting is prescribed for you, and you dislike it. So, remember what we read in that other episode? It says that it's the jihadis that are the most valuable and get the greatest rewards. And it says those that sit at home and only give their money will never achieve the same reward. But it says that if you, remember we read about how you're not allowed, if you're a Muslim, to make friends with non-Muslims. And it says that if you befriend them and are friendly to them, you are one of them. And then they turn around and you're an apostate. And what do they do to apostates? They hunt them down and they honor rape them and then they honor kill them. Doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman. For some reason, Islamic males rape men and women, and they call it an honor rape. If the hijab is off, their hair is out a little bit, or if their burqa or if part of their suit doesn't satisfy the person, or doesn't matter, even if everything is perfect, all they have to do is claim something is out of uniform, out of spec, and they automatically get away with any crime because men are more important than women. Oh, well, wait a minute. Is that possible? Let's see. Says here, Quran, chapter 2, 223rd. You women your women are your fields, so go into your fields whichever way that you like. Huh. The woman doesn't have a choice. Let's see here. We have a hadith. We're supposed to try to stick to Quran, but let's just see. It says, if a man invites his wife to sleep with him and she refuses to come to him, then the angels send their curses on her till morning. Bukhari something. Husbands are a degree above their wives. Quran in Surah 2:228 says, wives have the same rights as the husbands have on them. Oh, that's equality. In accordance with the generally known principles. Oh, wait a minute. There's a proviso. Of course, men are a degree above them in status. Saeed Abdul Allah Maududi, The Meaning of the Quran, Volume 1, page 165. Huh. Gender inequality shows up in a theological context. This hadith shows how the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women. The prophet said, I looked at paradise and found poor people, forming the majority of its inhabitants. And I looked at hell and saw that the majority of its inhabitants were women. Huh. Why? Women are mistreated by the men. They're constantly being raped. Remember, they're pedophiles. They rape little children from age 3 on up. Hey, don't take my word for it. I had the video. The government went in and allowed my computer to be hacked, and they destroyed. I had several videos where they were not only fighting for their right to be pedophiles. One of the videos that I had, I was able to download. You could see the imams and the rich guys, and there were little 2-year-old babies, 3-year-old babies in diapers doing stripper dances and taking their little clothing off, and they were fanning and making the money rain. They were throwing their money out to this baby doing a stripper dance. There was a couple of them. It wasn't just one. That's not equality. Children don't need to be sexualized. They're not psychologically nor physically ready for it. It's illegal. Forgive me, I'm not supposed to be editorializing, and I'm not supposed to be losing my temper. But, isn't that so strange that Muhammad makes it very clear that women aren't as valuable? And we will find out in a later episode that it takes 2 women's word to be able to equal 1 man's word. And when it comes down to it, another man, a Muslim, they already take an oath not to narc on another man. So if he cheats on his wife or his mistress or his slave, well, they're not going to narc on each other because they protect each other. So therefore, you're going to have more men witnessing. And it doesn't matter because the women know that they're going to get the hell beat out of them for trying to get these people in trouble. That's the system. It's a caste system. And again, Allah says terror strengthens and fortifies Islam. They do it amongst their own. Here we go. A male gets a double share of the inheritance over a female. Well, of course we know that. Quran Surah 4:11. The share of the male shall be twice of the female. There you have it. So that's twice as valuable in 2 different situations. The generally agreed upon way of doing things among us about fixed shares of inheritance, fara'idi, of children from the mother or the father when one or the other dies, is that if they leave a male and female children, the male takes the portion of 2 females. This Islamic law is regressive. In the U.S., for example, inheritance is divided equally. So the American secular law fits into the modern context much better. A woman's testimony counts half as much as a man's. Surah 2:282. Let 2 men from among you bear witness to all such documents, contracts, loans, without interest, whatever. But if 2 men be not available, there should be 1 man and 2 women to bear witness, so that if one of the women forgets anything, the other may remind her. In other words, one of the things about fraternal orders, which all religions are, they'll vouch for you. If somebody will not vouch for you, you can never achieve a certain level. Because, say, look at Albert Pike and P. Manley Hall, upper level, 33rd degree Masons. At least Albert Pike was. And he made it very clear. Lucifer is the god of the Freemasons. But he also makes it clear that only the 30th, 31st, 32nd, and the 33rd degrees are allowed to be aware of this knowledge. So everybody underneath thinks that they're working for a benevolent organization. But no, it's just part of the beast system. And again, how do you become a Mason? You have to be vouched for. You have to be invited. Otherwise, you'll never get up into the upper echelon because, again, you have to make your bones. You have to prove yourself before you can get up there. And there's a lot of evidence against you. They have to make you break the law, and they have to keep documents of it. That way, blackmail and extortion keep them from keeping you from narking on them. Hadith removes any ambiguity about women's abilities. The Prophet said, isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man? The woman said, yes. He said, this is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind. Well, that's not just slander. That's just psychologically, sociologically, and scientifically immoral and inaccurate. Muhammad was not a very intelligent person. He wasn't just illiterate. He admitted that he was demon possessed, and yet he pretended to be a scientist. He said the earth was flat, and if you don't believe it, you burn in hell forever. Said that it sits on a whale. The earth sits on a whale. Oh, really? You don't believe it? You're going to burn in hell forever. Muhammad said it. He said the sun sets in a muddy pool on earth. And if you don't believe it, you're going to burn in hell. No Muslim has the right to tell anybody anything. They have no right to slander anyone. They have no right to demean anyone because their folklore is some of the stupidest fables ever written. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm scientifically being honest. Historically, it is an inaccurate book. Many things that they decree never happened. Moses didn't talk to Abraham. They didn't even live in the same time frame. Didn't talk to Adam. Didn't live in the same time frame. But yet, Muhammad said they did. You don't believe what Muhammad said? You're going to burn in hell forever, according to Muhammad himself, who admitted that he was demon possessed, tricked by the devil, and spoke lies. Okay. Number 5. Slave girls are sexual property of their male owners. And forbidden to you are wedded wives of other people, except those who have fallen in your hands, in parentheses, as prisoners of war. In other words, people that they've kidnapped. Kidnapping is a federal offense. You're stealing someone. In Sharia law, if you steal something from a religious leader, they'll chop off a hand and a foot. If you rape their daughter, oh, they'll probably just kill you. But if they send you out to go do it to a non-Muslim and you refuse, you're an apostate, and they will either demean you or kill you, punish you, torture you, show that you're a bad example, not a good Muslim. Remember, a good Muslim will go out and murder when they're told to. And we read earlier that a bad Muslim, someone who doesn't like the violence, it's prescribed for them. They don't have a choice. So how can anyone say that it's a religion of peace when it is a command? It is a commandment from Muhammad. It is prescribed by Dr. Muhammad that they must go out and pillage, rape, murder, steal. They are pirates and nothing less. Some of the precious people want to be peaceful and they want to live in harmony. They can't get out or they'll be hunted down and murdered. We'll get into that later. The Prophet sent Ali to Khalid to bring the khums of the booty. And Ali had taken a bath after a sexual act with a slave girl from the khums. What was Muhammad's response? Do you hate Ali for this? Don't hate him, for he deserves more than that from the khums, the booty. Why? Because the person loved to murder. He loved to break into people's houses, kill the males, rape the women, take all the booty, and run out. So he's more important. Muhammad said so. Said it right there. It is better for you not to do so. Practice coitus interruptus. There is no person that is destined to exist but will come to existence till the day of resurrection. So clearly, Muhammad, if that's who this is, in a hadith, this is why Muslims are, well, they're told to have many, many children. They're not allowed not to have kids. And there's a law in Sharia law that only after certain months, you can't murder that child in Islam. Funny, I don't hear them getting up and having fights with the abortionists. Why? Because it's okay. They want the abortionists to murder all of the unbelievers. Oh boy. Here's a rule that Muhammad broke himself. But this is probably him making the rule as we listen. Quran Surah 4:3. And if you Be apprehensive that you will not be able to do justice to the orphans. You may marry 2 or 3 or 4 women, whom you choose. But if you apprehend that you might not be able to do justice to them, then marry only one wife, or marry those who have fallen in your possession, people you kidnapped. Let's be honest. You see, there's always doublespeak. Fell into your hand? No. You broke into their house, stole their shit, killed their husband, possibly, or left them wounded, kidnapped these people and took them, and then raped them. That's not peaceful. I heard Allah's apostle. See Surah 424. I heard Allah's apostle who was on the pulpit saying, Banu Hisham bin Al-Amaguya have requested me to allow them to marry their daughter to Ali bin Abu Talib. But I don't give permission and will not give permission unless Ali bin Ali Talib divorces my daughter in order to marry their daughter. Because Fatima is part of my body and I hate what she hates to see, and what hurts her hurts me. Maybe I'm not reading it right. Ooh, Muhammad's special marriage privileges. Surah 33:50. O Prophet, we have made lawful to you those of your wives whose dowers you have paid, and those women who come into your possession out of the slave girls granted by Allah, kidnapped victims, and the daughters of your paternal uncles and aunts. He's not just a pedophile, it's incest. And of your maternal uncles and aunts who have migrated with you, and the believing woman who gives herself to the Prophet, if the Prophet may desire her. This privilege is for you only, not for the others, remember? Conveniently, Muhammad is God. Allah is not God. Allah makes magic phrases every time Muhammad needs an alteration to make himself and his life more beneficial to himself and his life. A husband may simply get rid of one of his undesirable wives. Quran 4:129. It is not within your power to be perfectly equitable in your treatment with all your wives, even if you wish to be so. Therefore, in order to satisfy the dictates of divine law, do not lean towards one wife so as to leave the other in a state of suspense. Maudidi, Volume 1, page 381. He provides an interpretation of the verse. Allah made it clear that the husband cannot literally keep equality between 2 or more wives because they themselves cannot be equal in all respects. It is too much to demand from a husband that he should mete out equal treatment to a beautiful wife and to an ugly wife, to a young wife and to an old wife, to a healthy wife and to an invalid wife, to a good-natured wife and to an ill-natured wife. These and the like things naturally made a husband more inclined towards one wife than the other. So it is a devised equality based on the convenience of the individual and their proclivities. Again, so the real law states that the guys can do basically anything that they want as long as they don't do it with the daughter of a religious leader above them. They do it with the non-Muslims. They're nothing but fodder. They're cattle. We'll get into a whole list of debasing comments about how they talk about the Hebrews and mentioning how they're like animals and saying horrible, terrible lies about them just to debase and demean them so that people will hate them. Again, that's a hate crime. And again, it's racism. And since all Muslims are obligated to hate all Hebrews, and we already sometimes quoted and will later on about, hey, there's a Jew behind that rock or that tree. You're hunting him down. Come get him and kill him. You know, we saw how, we haven't even gotten into those yet. Oh, that's right. We're dealing with how men and women are not treated fairly. Okay, Surah 434. If you fear high-mindedness from your wives, remind them of the teaching of who? God? Then ignore them when you go to bed. Then hit them. If they obey you, you have no right to act against them. It says it. Neglect women. If they don't do exactly what you want, hit them. If they don't exactly do what you want. What if what you want is perverted, sick, vile, evil, and illegal? It doesn't matter. Girl's opinion doesn't mean anything. It only means half as much, and since the man is there, he'll deny it. And he'll find a couple of men that'll help him deny it because they're going to want him to help them when they do it. Because again, they're going to be so used to doing it to non-Muslims that it really, back in their mind, is, well, what's the difference? Honor among thieves? No. If you respect somebody, you treat them far better behind their back than and to their face. If you're afraid of them, you only kiss their ass when they're watching. Hit them. Neglect them. See, depriving people? That is psychological manipulation and physical terror. Physical abuse. So they're talking about mental and physical abuse being commanded in Quran. Quran, Surah 65, 1 and 4. O Prophet, when you and the believers divorce women, divorce them for their prescribed waiting. Period. Just prescribed waiting period, sorry. I thought it was a period, but no, wedding, forget it. I'm not very funny. Anyway, and count the waiting period accurately. And if you are in doubt about those of your women who have despaired of menstruation, you should know that their waiting period is 3 months. And the same applies to those who have not menstruated as yet. As for pregnant women, their period ends when they have delivered their burden. Okay. So that we didn't miss anything there. You're allowed to go a certain amount of time without raping them. But prepubescent, it's talking about girls that haven't even menstruated yet. They're talking about little girls. We're talking about pedophilia here. Again, the child isn't even sexually viable until their body, by their DNA, is turned into that switch being flipped. And because they're giving hormones to the animals that we eat, all of a sudden now our generations, many generations of that, now we've got girls that are coming far too soon into that way. And of course, that's not healthy either. They don't need to be worried about that burden. It also comes with discomfort. Hurrying up discomfort. It's just, if I was in charge, I tell you, we wouldn't need global warming and we wouldn't need jihad to wipe out the majority of the population. I would just hunt down every terrorist, every politician, every judge, every lawyer, every single person that went out of their way to harm anybody else or let someone else do it or help them get away with it. I would just wipe out all of the murderers, all of the violent thieves and pedophilic rapists. And I bet that most of the fraternal orders would then be cleaned out. And the rest of us would be fine. Again, the racist black African slavery was initiated and perpetuated by the Moors, the Muslims that invaded North Africa, Eastern Asia, Southern Europe, and they had white slaves. They had Asian slaves, and they had black slaves. It wasn't my family. No. We were Masons, but we didn't have slaves. As a matter of fact, we didn't even live where the slaves were being exploited. So why should people hate me and my family? My dad said some of our family went down to the south and helped some of the slaves get up north and have a life. Why should we be punished? The only people that should be punished for slavery are the descendants of those that had everything to do with it. The Muslims, first of all. The Jesuits, second of all. The Masons, third of all. The Templars, fourth of all. The Rosicrucians and the Shriners. These are the people that were the slave drivers and the slave owners and the slave beaters. Forgive me, I'm not supposed to lose my cool. But I have a real problem with bullies. I have a real problem with liars. I have a real problem with vicious and violent people. And it's difficult for me to laugh about it. I used to make jokes about it. Because I tried to be positive. And a little kid said, David, you laugh at everything. You don't care about anything, do you? And that hit hard. That really hit me hard. And then all of a sudden, now I care so much about everything that I find it hard to control. And I don't mean that I'm a violent, an enraged, angry person. I don't mean that. I just mean I can't watch a commercial because I've worked in so many different industries, had so many different jobs, doing so many different things in the world of textiles and petrochemicals and food and agriculture, among many other technological jobs, that when I hear something on television, if I've worked with that item and I understand the basis of it, say pharmaceuticals. Well, my knowledge of pharmaceuticals is not extensive because I didn't go to medical school, but one thing that I do know, when it comes to advertising, you're going to want to present the good and you're going to want to minimize the bad. Here's a rule of thirds. If 1/3 of your entire commercial is everything bad about your product that diminishes the quality of life for your customers, and the first 2/3 are whitewashing the fact that their product isn't even as good as a placebo, but it'll make your life better if you get this prescription. And they show people, and they're so sure of themselves at first. Oh, it's that threat-based sales of, oh, your life and you're so miserable. And then all of a sudden, oh, and here's this product that comes along, and now, oh, life is so much better. Oh, I should have done this so long ago. I can't wait to tell everybody about how great this product is. And then, of course, nope. Then what it will really do to the majority of people that take that product. And do not forget, for every petroleum-based, petrochemical-based product, pharmaceutical that you take, those chemicals are not congruent with your body. They can say, oh, well, this part is here, and this part is here, and this part is here, so it's going to absorb it. Oh, yeah? Really? Why do we have so many diseases now? Vaccines that used to be used to eliminate diseases are now causing diseases to crop up. Now, if they were to actually document people that take vaccines and yet still get the diseases that they were supposed to eliminate, they'd find that the vaccines don't do anything but make people sick. Oh, go online, look at my research. Now, the YouTube keeps destroying the videos, but a committee of doctors and even some of the people that made some of the early vaccines talked about the radioactive materials, the toxic materials, the poisons, and the dead biologicals in vaccines. And how they wouldn't give them to their kids because they knew how their health would be detrimentally affected. All right. So anyway, there is much, much more. So talking about beating their wives, talking about raping little children, even before they've had their menstruation. Hadith. Then Muhammad wrote the marriage wedding contract with Aisha when she was a girl of 6 years of age. And he consumed that marriage when she was 9. O Prophet, asked Abu Bakr for Aisha's hand in marriage. Abu Bakr said, but I am your brother. The Prophet said, you are my brother in Allah's religion and his book. But she, Aisha, is lawful for me to marry. Bukhari. See, this hadith shows Muhammad's dream life in regards to his pursuit of little Aisha. And this one. Oh, sorry. more links showing that this isn't an isolated passage, that there are many admissions of how this person pursued little children and raped them when they were children. I'm going to just go ahead and get back into the, well, we're here. Okay, this hadith describes Muhammad counseling a Muslim man to marry a young virgin for the extra thrill it gives him to fondle her. When I got married, Allah's apostle said to me, "What type of lady have you married?" I replied, "I have married a matron." He said, "Why don't you have the liking for virgins and for fondling them?" He isn't just a pedophile. He encourages others to do it. Why don't you have a liking for the virgins and for fondling them? Jabir also said, Allah's apostle said, "Why didn't you marry a young girl so that you might play with her and she with you?" And there's more hadiths discussing this. Narrated by Aisha, "The Prophet and I used to take a bath from a single pot, and we were jubnab. During the menses, he used to order me to put on an itzar, the waist, like a, whenever we're cooking and we put on the apron kind of thing, I guess. Because, you're not supposed to touch the blood. You're not supposed to make contact with it. You're supposed to leave menstruational women alone. Absolutely. They're in a flushing period. They're not supposed to be messed with. It's the whole idea. Anyway, put on the dress and he used to fondle me. Okay, well, doing the very thing that he's not supposed to be doing. While in ikaf. And he used to bring his head near me, and I would wash it while I used to be in my periods. So they're in this bloody water, bathing, and he's playing with her. For more evidence of this and more outlandish of Muhammad's domestic acts, even for 7th century Arabia. Oh, man, you got to go to this site. Top 10 rules in the Quran that oppress women. Go look it up online, please. www.americanthinker.com, articles 2005, 11 top 10 rules in the Quran. THA.html. You see, it is not an isolated situation. Okay. We've reached an hour. I'm going to take a break because it's probably not fair to you guys to have to sit through my rantings and my ravings. And again, I am very sorry. But I feel for the victims. I suffer from empathy and from sympathy. So it's very difficult for me to detach myself when I'm thinking that these precious little children, who the Father above created, to live a life, to have a relationship with Him and with their family, and get an education and be a positive influence and a contributor to society. But what we have is this ancient medieval Dark Ages mentality that they are not allowing anybody to escape from. Even in this technological world, they still force them to follow the rules of Sharia, since the Wahhabists established it back in the 70s. Do yourself a favor. Go to my website. Although YouTube destroyed some of them, if you want, get me. I'll email you some of my videos. It is Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey, some of these other places before the Wahhabist invasion, or whatever you want to call it. And they had colleges, gross national products. They had industry, and they were burgeoning commercial entities. And as soon as the Sharia law was implemented, there go the burqas are on, and beheadings and slavery and kidnappings and sex slavery and basically piracy. Again, Islam is a pirate network. It is not based on science. It is not based on factual evidence. It is not based on peace. It is not based on, it is a psychological manipulative foundation. They use hell as a threat, they use paradise as a lure. We'll get into that in some of the next segments. But anyway, understand that the Father does love you. The Messiah paid to reconcile us back to the Father as promised in the garden, as promised down through the ages. Deuteronomy chapter 18, look specifically at verses 15 through 19. The Father says that he, he will bring from amongst their brethren one of the seed, and he will be a prophet like unto Moshe, Uncle Moses. It says that it is he, that Yahuwah, he says, I will personally put my words into his mouth. And when I put my words into the mouth of that prophet, it will be your duty and you will be held accountable for those words. Just like in the garden, the Father said, that is my tree, my personal stash, leave it alone. Everything else is yours and it's free. But then he let the adversary con them into eating the fruit, putting them under the umbrella of sin, therefore initiating the need for redemption and reconciliation, the plan of salvation. And then putting that forth, we see the first lesson. He gave instructions, he gave opposing information. They fell, they found out the Father told us the truth, this person lied. Lesson number one, you can always trust what the Father says, even though you may not be able to comprehend it. You may not be able to understand it. You may not have any frame of reference of experience. Adam and Eve, Grandma and Grandpa had no idea what death was, had no idea what disease and pain and suffering was. I don't think that if they stubbed their toe in the garden, they didn't feel pain. I think that it was a perfect world, but if they stubbed their toe, of course, but it would heal. Because again, it's designed, the body is designed, the very DNA is a biological computer program on the molecular level. And it has processes, procedures, blueprints, schematics, all working in a precise time frame under certain auspices and certain categories, because certain things have to be built. Certain chemical plants have to be built before those chemicals can be created. And those chemicals need to be such as for the stomach to have stomach acid, but the stomach also has to have that mucus lining. So the stomach has to be built. The mucus layer has to be established. The acid then can be pumped in. Wow, look at all of this. If one thing happens before the other, let's say early on in the baby's life, the chemical plant to create the severe acid formulates first and starts pumping out product arbitrarily. It's going to dissolve that part of the body, and then it's going to then manipulate tissue with that disease, and it's going to fester, and it's going to turn even into a worse health hazard. Precise timeline, processes, procedures. It couldn't happen by accident. DNA cannot last outside the body for very long. Yet, there is a T-Rex, fossilized T-Rex that they found, but it wasn't entirely fossilized. Part of it still had bone that was still calcified. It had blood cells, skin, and muscle tissue. They have the ability to procure DNA of that Tyrannosaurus Rex. They have the ability to go to certain living lizards and resurrect it. It's the real Jurassic Park. They can do it. But the world-shaking aspect is 65 million years ago, if that was when this particular dinosaur lived, there's no way its DNA would be able to exist. It would have deteriorated. So, again, we have evidence that man lived contemporaneously with the dinosaurs, just as it says in Hebrew Scriptures. It was the Masons, using ancient Hindi evolution, cogitated and then placed and couched into pseudoscientific jargon to make it sound like it's science. But, again, in 2014, I found the stereo SOHO satellite, My Head is the Sun, No, it's not. And the satellites are in a stereo position on opposing sides looking at the sun. And they and the Earth, okay, well, actually, it would be more like my head is the Earth, and here's the stereo satellites out here looking at the sun. All right? Nonetheless, the point is, they measured over and over and over and over and over for years. And in 2014, I literally cut and paste the data, and it basically stated 4 million metric tons of mass is belched off the surface of the sun every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every month, of every year, of every decade, of every century, of every millennia. Now, the thing is, the further you go back in time, there's going to be more surface area. Based on physics, that means it's going to expel more. It's just the way it is. So I don't have those formulations to be able to extrapolate backwards, so I just keep it simple. 4 million metric tons every second. You go back in time. I decided to do the math going backwards to see how far we could go before the sun would be so large that it would have such a heat output that Earth would be like Venus. We would not be able to sustain any form of liquid water, which is what is necessary for life to evolve. And so I found that fortunately, there was also another page that discussed how there was the same page, a different aspect of the article, stated that the result of the 4 million metric ton expulsion rate every second, the sun, which is 2.7 million miles in circumference, 2.7 million miles around, it loses 5 feet every single day, because it's losing 4 million metric tons in every direction, microscopic photons and the protuberances and the magic little super belches of those big giant streamers. Some of it gets sucked back in, but a lot of it cruises off. So it's an average of 4 million metric tons a second, 5-foot circumference loss a day. I finally came to the conclusion that I did the math on the 5 feet a day. That comes to 827 feet. 1,827 feet is 0.3467273 something of a mile. 0.346 is more than 0.33333, so it's more than 1/3 of a mile. More than 1/3 of a mile every year is belched off of the sun, measured and averaged by 2014. Going back in time, it comes to every 3 years you go back, the sun would have regained 1 mile. So, the sun is 2.7 million miles around in 2014. Let's go back 3 million years. What does that equal? 1 million miles in circumference. If it is 2.7 million miles in 2014, it's going to be 3.7 million miles. Just going 3 million years in the past. That's global warming to the extreme. I tried to do the math just at that, but my video is online. I did a graphic in my computer showing the regular size of the sun, and then what it would be in 10 million years, what it will be in 65 million years. And so then it gives a person the idea, because you can only go back so far in time, and the Earth cannot have liquid water. The further you go back in time, the bigger the sun will be, the more it's going to pull all of the planets and their moons closer to itself. The further you go back in time, each orbit is going to speed up. Each orbit of each planet is going to spin up. Each orbit of each little moon is going to get faster and faster. So it's going to get to the point that you can only go back so far where there won't be a balance. It'll be so hot that you won't be able to have liquid water. So it's proof that evolution never happened. It's just another disproved religion. And they know it. Many of these people know that they're lying. Darwin wasn't stressing over trying to find a way to prove evolution because it was true. He was struggling. As a mid to upper level Mason, his grandfather was a 33rd degree, and they knew it was their duty to cram this new evolution, the new Hindi version of reincarnation, and force it on people. So that when they created socialism and communism, what's the first thing they did? They forced evolution down those people's throats, but not in the Muslim nations. Oh no, just the Christian nations. Why? And isn't that fun? But mostly just the Protestants. Because again, the Masons are underneath the Muslims that are underneath the Jesuits and the Templars that are Rome, Vatican controlled Constantinople. Again, the two legs of Rome. Check out Daniel chapter 2. Way back then, the Father told us about all of the empires and how that they will transition. So again, I went way too long. I apologize. I wasn't supposed to have this final commercial on here. I wanted to cut it short. But again, the Father loves you. The Messiah proved that he loved you. We know for the fact that the Messiah is a prophet. Again, he told us in our generation there would be wars and rumors of wars, that there would be conflict, nation rising against nation, peoples up against peoples. There would be famines and pestilence and war, crazy radical diseases and ridiculous storms. Pillars of fire and columns of smoke are discussed in Revelations. Nuclear testing. It talks about how the sunlight will be diminished. Well, there's a lot of pollution and a destabilization in the atmosphere already, to where there are places in China where they've got to wear face masks when they go outside. So, the Father told us the truth. He told us the end from the very beginning. We are here to learn eternal lessons in this finite timeline. Everyone is a victim here. We are here, and it's not to be, hopefully some moments will be pleasant. Some moments will be pleasurable. Some moments will be enlightening and exciting. But we need to pay attention. And we need to, the good news is the Father's going to save everyone. Isaiah said it, and Saul of Tarsus reiterated it. He says, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that the Father is supreme and the Messiah is his Son. So, it's not, if you don't say that magic incantation before you die, you're going to burn in hell forever. Nope, that's pagan. There is no hell. There's a lake of fire. But that is going to be a deterrent on the other side of the day of judgment. Once we see how great the Father is, how great the Messiah is, once we see why we went through what we went through, when he writes his Torah on our heart, then we will be able to police ourselves. Then he will let us fill the universe. He doesn't want us to be like mythology. He allowed mythology to be created to show how capricious it would be if people didn't know what was right and wrong and maintain the standard. You got to know the standard before you can recognize the counterfeit. You know who loves you, the Father above, the Messiah, and all of us.